Coming up on Tech News today, Microsoft snaps up SwiftKey. Google's head of search is moving on. Controversial anonymous app for teens after school gets some extra funding, and so much more. Tech News today is next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1442, recorded Wednesday, February 3rd, 2016.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by NatureBox. NatureBox is dedicated to making smart, delicious snacking easy. They have over 100 ridiculously delicious snacks that get delivered directly to your doorstep. Visit naturebox.com/twit to get 50% off your first box now.
And by FreshBooks, the super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of freelancers and small businesses the tools to save time billing and get paid faster. Try it free at freshbooks.com/TNT.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about the tech news with people who are passionate about technology. I am Megan Morrone.
And I am Jason Howell. Passion for tech runs deep on Tech News Today.
It does.
At least if we're playing our cards right. We're welcoming to the show today someone you might, I don't know, you might be familiar with her work. She used to do this show called Tech News Today. Now she works at TechCrunch. Sarah Lane, it's so good to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thanks for having me, guys. And congratulations on the relaunch of Tech News Today. It's nice to see you two together. Yeah. Having worked with you both, I think you're both extremely smart and capable, and I see great things for the future of the show, and I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. So tell everybody a little bit about what you've been doing at TechCrunch and kind of building over there.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's been watching Twit for some time, I left just over a year ago. I didn't want to, but I got a new job at TechCrunch, running the video team here. TechCrunch is obviously a tech blog, but video is more and more what we do regularly. That's actually a show that I host, Crunch Report, but we do a lot of shows, some episodic shows, some kind of one-off breaking news type shows. We had Uber deliver us a bunch of puppies today. So it's nice to be in, south of Market area of San Francisco where all the startups are, because we do stupid stuff all the time, but it's really fun place to work. And I've had a great year and I'm looking forward to 2016.
I was telling Jason that I thought maybe you guys got some puppies to play with today. He didn't believe me. He thought I was joking.
Well, I mean, how often does Uber deliver, a pile of puppies? I don't know. You say that out loud and it sounds ridiculous, but actually it sounds pretty awesome.
You didn't get to keep them though, right?
No, but we made a video out of it because nothing in life is worth doing if you don't make a show.
It's true. It's true.
You'll see that on TechCrunch.com very soon.
I will say one thing. Usually when you come in to Twit on video via Skype, we see cats roaming around behind you, and it doesn't look like we're going to see that today.
Did they get eaten by the puppies?
Unfortunately, the cats are at my home. This is not my living room. That'd be weird. I'm at work in a conference room. My cats aren't allowed here because I have all these coworkers that are allergic.
Yeah, so. I know that feel.
So I guess I won't bring them in.
Fine. Hey, I can identify with that completely. All right, hey, let's talk about some news. After rumors began bubbling up late yesterday afternoon, Microsoft confirmed this morning that it has, in fact, acquired SwiftKey. They're the makers of predictive keyboard apps for Android as well as iOS, with all 150-plus employees becoming Microsoft employees effective immediately. Microsoft says that it plans to continue development of SwiftKey apps as well as kind of integrate it, all the smart stuff happening underneath into its other services and its products, things like its workflow keyboard, kind of bringing, I'm imagining the predictive text aspect of SwiftKey into WordFlow. And yeah, I don't know. I'm a huge fan of SwiftKey. I've been a user of SwiftKey for years. So on one hand, I'm very, I'm thrilled to see that this happens to people that, that I've had on the show on All About Android before, and they're really great people and everything. On the other hand, I have questions about viability for app developers. And if SwiftKey, a team of 150 people creating a really great product, can't turn this into a long-term money-making plan, what does that say for kind of independent developers and all that
Well, and
kind
it
of stuff?
also sort of raises the question of SwiftKey started out, it was like a $4 app, right? I paid for it. In fact, at Twit, I think we all took a round at reviewing it, but they moved to a freemium model afterwards. So it's like, okay, well, now you can have it for free, and then we'll try to get you to pay for, kind of cool stuff. And so many small app companies do that. And it always seems to me like something in the model stops working, and they have to figure out better ways to get revenue coming in and get people to download the app, because maybe downloads have stalled a little bit because you kind of get all those people that don't want to pay $4 and are never going to. And then there's the question of, well, Microsoft says that SwiftKey will remain as is. The standalone apps are great. 300 million people use SwiftKey. That all sounds great. But, they also acquired Sunrise, which is the calendar app that I use on my phone, and then announced that it's going to be shut down as a standalone app. It took a while for them to do that, but that's always the trend.
Yeah.
And that's always what I'm worried about, because when I like something, I want it to remain as is. And, the big company buying the smaller company is all fine and good, but you end up losing that thing that you liked in the first place.
Yeah, and it doesn't bode well for small independent developers either, having an idea and thinking, I could really make this into something, except for, I don't know if you really want to feel sorry for them. And the Financial Times reported that it's a $250 million deal, so it's pretty good. So maybe they're just happy that it's gotten into the hands of people. Also, the idea...
Maybe that was always their plan. Who knows? But I think ultimately when you start something like this and you create a big team, your biggest ambition is that you create something huge that resides on its own and doesn't have to be acquired, that it can just be a money-making machine throughout the longevity of its existence. And it really seems like, in the case of SwiftKey especially, a couple of years ago was like prime point. If their purposes were to be acquired, obviously it didn't happen a couple of years ago, but that was when they were at the top of the top. And things have kind of slid a little bit for them. So I can't help but feel like they could have got more at their peak. And now, as it's kind of coming back down, they didn't quite get as much as maybe they were worth, but that's just
$250 million. I mean, sure, it sounds a lot. Sounds like a lot to us, but it's not that much. I mean, SwiftKey, I think they raised just over $20 million. There are investors to pay back. It's, with all of the employees that they have, that doesn't sound like a runaway hit of an acquisition to me.
Right.
Well, the PR says they've saved over 100,000 years in combined typing time, which is amazing. But what they're also doing, and why Microsoft bought them, I think, is just the artificial intelligence piece of this. Just seeing how they can learn from what people are typing and predicting what they're going to type and learning so much about us so that they can make robots that will take over.
Potentially, maybe Cortana becomes, maybe this becomes a Trojan horse for Cortana on different platforms, and integrating Cortana into the keyboard in some way, shape, or form. SwiftKey also, I know this is an Android app. I'm not sure if it was on iOS, but they have this kind of beta project. Actually, it's probably an alpha because it's in the title. SwiftKey Neural Alpha, which is essentially like a neural network prediction keyboard, and it was always just kind of like a test and, not necessarily a full launch. And their ultimate goal, from what they said, was, all the stuff that they learned from this is going to be integrated into SwiftKey. So I think you're absolutely right. A big part of this is kind of the AI behind it, because this is, this keyboard in particular really aimed to kind of be predictive text better than what you are used to, that can actually kind of look backwards at the context of the sentence and kind of correct it so that it's right after the fact,
And Jason, you probably have a much better idea of how much third-party apps are beloved on the Android ecosystem. But, for iOS, most people don't really use them. Now, I know you're listening, you're watching, I love my third-party, I love SwiftKey. It's like I know that some people do, but most people don't. It's cumbersome to switch between keyboards. You can't get rid of iOS has never really been conducive to me. I try them all, and then I uninstall them after a couple of weeks because I don't like to toggle between keyboards. So I think that SwiftKey may have realized, well, as far as standalone apps go, sure, we'll keep them alive, but we may have reached our limit on that source of revenue.
Yeah, iOS, allowed for third-party keyboards to happen. Obviously, SwiftKey was at the front of that. And then anything that I've heard about, just like you say, Sarah, the general kind of sense around alternative keyboards on iOS is never that it's an amazing experience. On Android, I can personally say that, yes, tons of people use these alternative keyboards, and they are very devoted to them. They find one that works for them. SwiftKey is a prime example right at the top as far as, replacement keyboards that people just, they find it works, and it's what they install going forward on whatever device they happen to be using. So yeah, it seems like it's a little bit different of a scenario. And if they broke into iOS and that was going to be a big opportunity and that didn't pan out, for whatever technical reason, or just, iOS users just don't care to replace their keyboards, then maybe that's, that's like a sign like, hey, maybe we've kind of reached a point here and we need to move on.
Right. I mean, maybe they'll make it better. I mean, that's the other thing we haven't discussed. It's Microsoft buying this, but, not for Windows Phone. You brought up Sunrise, Sarah, and there's also Accompli, which was another email app that everybody loved that they turned into Outlook, which now I use regularly and I really like. So maybe Microsoft will be able to make it easier to use this on iOS.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still, I still think it's going to be bundled under whatever Microsoft product they would like to push on iOS. Microsoft is all over iOS, so that's not really that big of a problem. But, again, going back to my Sunrise comment, it's like, I know that the best of Sunrise will be baked into Outlook, but I liked Sunrise the way it was.
Fair enough.
All right, let's move on to another app story. As it turns out, investors are very interested in paying big bucks for things that they think teenagers like. Kurt Wagner over at Recode reports that anonymous app After School just received $16.4 million in funding. Now, in case you're not familiar with After School, it's a social networking app, sort of like Yik Yak, where you can post whatever you want anonymously, except for the fact that you have to link it to your Facebook account so that they can prove that your age. And if you want to get into special age-restricted sections where you can see curse words and that sort of thing, you have to scan your driver's license. I actually logged into After School last year because I'm kind of the creepy mom that does that. I said I went to Petaluma High School, which I do not, and I did it for journalistic purposes, but it let me in. It let me see everything, and it was weird because I saw the faces of my friends' children, like in their, Facebook profile, because that's what it pulls in, and I immediately went off and did not creep around in there. That's all. I just looked and said, you don't have to actually, they don't do anything to check to see if you're actually a student.
Right.
So I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
I hate anonymous apps.
I'm with you.
I think that they encourage bad behavior, and that does not necessarily mean kids. It's, remember Secret?
Yep.
That was like the worst app ever.
Yeah.
Horrible adults saying horrible things about each other. But I guess I respect the fact that a company is trying to, have some sort of identity built into it so that if really something were to go down, you could figure out who it was based on their Facebook profile. I still just, I don't know. I don't think much of this stuff. I'm not sure if it's because I'm older. I don't think that's it. I think that I don't really like anonymous things. I think that the internet has taught me, if nothing else, that if you give someone that kind of power, they'll say something really mean.
Yeah, it kind of goes right directly to the, well, no one knows who I am, so I can really say whatever I want, and that gets vitriolic.
Even if they can figure out who you are.
Yeah.
It's just that weird false sense of confidence, and it brings out the worst in people. Not all the time, but it can.
Well, I think there's a place for anonymity with kids, kids who want to express, their sexual orientation or, just there's something that's happening to them that they need an anonymous place to talk about it. I think there is a place for that. From what I experienced with After School, that wasn't really the place for this.
Well, and After School isn't the only app like this. There's Yik Yak, which is also kind of in the same territory, appeals to a much the same generation. Although I think I was reading something today that's like, it's a millennial app, and I'm like, okay, well,
yeah, it's for it was for colleges because you had to prove you were in the area.
So it's maybe a little bit older. Yeah, I think the water gets a little murky when you start getting into anonymous and kids, because there's the discussion always kind of goes around to, well, do the kids know better, or do they know well enough to do this responsibly and and have these tools? Because having an anonymous platform like this that everybody that is connecting to, whether they know that it's you or not, is a lot of power, and that's a lot of power to put in the hands of, let's say, a 16-year-old, and expect a kind of responsible discourse and conversation. Like, probably not going to happen. And we already know that anonymity makes people jerks. So, then you've got the fear of things like bullying and, teen suicide, because, man, this kind of stuff really hits kids hard when they see something like that directed at them. I can only imagine. So, I don't know.
I mean, maybe it applies to just IDs as well, but it's like you kind of get into another gray area where you're like, well, if you want to see all the good curse words, you got to scan your driver's license. And like the kid who can't afford the car is like, well, I don't have one. It's
and then it kind of encourages those kids to make, it's like now I need a false ID because I want to get into the swear word room.
Right. And then they're like 10 years old anyway, because the 16-year-olds don't really care about things like that. They just curse amongst themselves as it is.
Now
I'm sure your kids don't do that, but
they do.
But not yet anyway. Human curators. There are human curators here, and apparently they read every single post. So I don't know how much that actually controls the landscape of an app like this, especially considering volume, right?
The kids don't want that. Do they know that? Do they know there's a curator reading everything? That's the worst.
Right. Yeah. That's what they're paying.
I don't know.
That's where the investment comes in, right? That's why a lot of people were like, oh, this is great. It's like the things that kids want, and parents will also say it's great because you have to do this and this and jump through these hoops. But I don't think so. But I think also the investment is interesting because we all know how Snapchat started. It was the kids were using it to send pictures of themselves naked. That was what it started as, and look at it now. So, I mean, I think maybe that's what some of the money that comes from, like, oh, well, if that's how Snapchat started, maybe an app
never know the long tail.
Right, an app that got kicked out of the App Store because of cyberbullying, maybe that will become the thing. As long as the kids are there, then we can monetize, and, then Katie Couric will be on there in 5 years.
Maybe.
One can dream.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see about that.
Yahoo ain't doing so well, so.
Yeah, she might have to, switch over. Amit Singhal, he's been a Googler since 2000, and he's head of Google Search, announced that he's leaving the company at the end of the month to pursue philanthropy and spend time with his family. Amit has been one of the most influential forces in the development of Google Search over the years, at least since 2000, speeding up search, making it smarter, extending search inside mobile apps, which is super useful, integrating widgets into kind of the search experience, doing a whole lot of stuff. So this is a really big loss for Google as far as that's concerned, in one of their key areas. So he's going to actually be replaced by Gann and Andrea, who's the current VP. Gian Andrea? Yeah, who knows? Current VP of Engineering with Research and AI. And John has done a lot of really cool things, actually. So it's interesting to see these worlds intersect. Rank Brain, which was to improve search result accuracy using those neural networks. Always seems to be coming back to neural networks these days. He applied the machine learning to image recognition in Google Photos, the smart replies in Inbox. So Google's really kind of, as all the big companies are right now, really on a move to bring this kind of neural, artificial intelligence stuff to the really important things like search.
Did you report on this today, Sarah, on your show?
No, I didn't. No, it's not because I don't care about search, but no, it just didn't make it into the lineup. But he's retiring, right? Yeah. So it's not like it's like, whoa, controversial. What's really going on? He's ruined search. But I think that anytime somebody who's so instrumental in our behavior, we as users, has been, you kind of sit back and think, wow, what would it have been like to actually been in that job this whole time, and to just been at a company like Google, which is. It's just such a force, really, in human behavior, machine behavior. And I thought about it a little bit today, like the way that my own searches have changed, because I just know I now know how good Google is at knowing what I want to know.
Yeah.
That's just such a stupid way to explain it. But it's come a long way.
Yeah, he was employee 176. So he actually rewrote those original algorithms that Sergey Brin and Larry Page wrote. The original algorithms, he was in charge of rewriting them. He's been inside there. So yeah, he's just retiring. But it is interesting, and it does get back to AI. And forgive me, but I saw Ex Machina last night. I finally finished watching it. I watched it only in 20-minute increments because it was too much to take.
You should have split it up into 15-second increments and posted it on
But now I
Instagram.
can't get it. Have you seen that yet, Sarah? Ex Machina?
Yeah, it came out like a year ago, Megan. Where you been?
I've been here.
I'm just kidding. No, it was great.
I know. I finally saw it. And so now I can't get, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who still hasn't seen it, Jason Howell, but I can't get it out of my mind. Like, it's just like, I don't want the algorithms to know me any better. I don't, it's scary. So,
well,
yeah, I know.
It is, I guess. It's so funny. There's this, do you guys know, this is very non sequitur, but there's this image of a bunch of kids. It's like from like a Windows packet from 1991 or something, and they're all looking at this computer and they're all freaking out. When I explain that to you, do you know what image I'm talking about? It's kind of this meme image that comes up on the internet.
I feel like
anyway,
I know roughly of.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe somebody can pull it up in the background, but
Probably.
It's really funny because they're all freaking out, and then there's like a kid in the back on the couch, and he just like looks like he's like passed out. And so it's just like, what happened to that kid? They're all supposed to be having so much fun on this computer. But I was trying to find that image on Google, and so I'm like searching like craziest kids on computer 90s. I'm gonna find it, right? Because Google always has everything.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it, and finally, just like I don't know what came over me. I searched kid on couch on Twitter, and I found it right away.
Wow, that's really impressive. It is interesting.
I know.
No, I mean, over the years, like how many searches have we all individually conducted over the years? We've programmed our brains to speak a certain language when it comes to trying to find information, and definitely Amit's involvement in this over the years undoubtedly has to be a huge part of the fact that we can go on there and speak its language and not really have to go too far out of our own kind of train of thought in order to do it now. I feel like before you had to get really specific, and now you can almost ask a question. You can almost do it conversationally, and to a large degree, that's what you do with Google now. You ask it a question, it issues that question as a search and gives you a result. And I think so much of that is because of Amit's work. I'm just curious to see the changes in search that happen over the next 10 years in kind of the new leadership in search, if it's so directly tied to AI, and that's such a huge initiative. So I'm sure we're in for another interesting ride as far as that's concerned.
I think so. So Google isn't just about taking over and sending people that look like humans out into the world that are really just computers in their brains. They're doing good also. Last summer, we told you about a new White House initiative called Connect Home, designed to bring free gigabit internet access to public housing properties that offer Google Fiber. The program begins in Kansas City today and includes the ability to purchase discounted devices and learn computer skills. So this is great news. They're giving people the really fast internet access. They've given away internet access in other places in Austin, but it's not as fast. So this is good news.
Gigabit speed for free. They also don't have to pay a $300 installation cost, which you would normally have to pay if you were getting this through Google Fiber. It would normally cost $70 a month. So pretty awesome. They're also offering the chance to buy like discounted hardware as well as take classes on computer skills, kind of, I don't know, improving the digital divide, I guess, as it were.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, kids need internet access. They, the faster, the better. Just to, and adults do too, to get jobs and
just to compete. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, I think it sounds great,
and I want it. I want the fiber. I don't need free fiber, but I want the fiber.
The thing is, like, this is a great program. I don't know who would say that it isn't. I'm just jealous.
You just want Google's fiber. Well, Comcast, from what I understand, is now rolling out their like Fiber Plus, which is like 2 gigabit speeds, but it's like $300 a month. So
yeah, I'm not gonna pay that.
Why not? Oh, come on, it's only $300 a month.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are, if you're actually running a business out of your house, of course, that makes a lot of sense. But no, my internet is pretty dinky these days. I get my Netflix movies okay, but
there you go, right? Priorities.
This is awesome. I would be curious to know what kind of computer skills people are being taught, because it always sounds really good on paper, and it's like, what are the skills really? but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, something's better than nothing, for sure. 1 year ago, Intel chief executive Brian Krzanich committed to 40% of new hires being women or underrepresented minorities. And according to its Global Diversity and Inclusion Report, Intel surpassed that goal with 43.1%. Brian also made a pledge to make the workforce fully representative of women and underrepresented minorities by 2020. Not necessarily to population, but to kind of the talent pool. And basically, they're just being super transparent with all of this stuff in a way that I don't think, I mean, you know, Google, Facebook, these companies aren't really detailing publicly exactly. They're saying that they want to make changes in this regard, but they're not kind of putting numbers on it, you know, and not revealing exactly the outcome. And Intel's kind of going a little bit further out there and just saying, hey, if we're transparent, it could actually influence other companies to be very transparent about this stuff.
Yeah, it sounds great. But, you know, this, like, unlike our last story, is a little, I mean, there's a little bit, it's not all great news. I mean, 40% of new hires, but still only 3.5% of its employees identify as Black. But they are working on the right things. Like, you know, you look at they have a new person in charge of diversity, and they're working on the right things: retention, inclusion, and cultural transformation, which is what we've talked about. You did that great interview last week when I was gone, Jason, just about, you know, you need a different culture. You need to change the culture so that people don't feel like, wow, I do not belong here.
Right.
So that is interesting. I also think that, you know, this article talks about gender parity. They said that they have 100% parity in pay among gender for U.S. jobs at all levels.
That's awesome.
Which is great. Yeah. But I think that isn't the whole story either, because it's not, I just listened to this I'm always quoting Freakonomics podcast, but it was great. It was about, what was it called? You should listen to it. It's called The True Story Behind the Gender Pay Gap. Because it's not just about women doing the same jobs. There's like so many factors in here. And when you say like women are getting paid less to do the same job, that's not technically true. Women are just not doing the same jobs generally for various reasons.
Interesting. Apparently I have to listen to Freakonomics podcast, because you're not the only one that tells me it's a great show.
Listen to this first, then go listen to that.
All right. Now, one thing that they do point out is this kind of theory of it being a pipeline issue. You know, some people are saying that the reason there isn't a more diverse tech workforce is because you know, there aren't enough qualified people, let's say. Does this, I mean, the improvements that Intel's making here, does that kind of disprove that theory, do you think? What do you guys think?
I don't think, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. I just can't imagine that. Yeah, I know that some companies have a hard time hiring the best talent because there are just a lot of tech jobs now. And Intel probably feels the pain of that because it's more of a legacy company, and there are probably a lot of really qualified people who want to work for hot startups like Snapchat. But that's kind of like, all right, well, if you can't get the best people in, then you need to fire your recruiters.
Right.
It's like, if it's not working, then get the people in that will make it work. I don't know.
Talent. And ability.
Yeah. I don't know if I really buy the fact of like, they're just not out there, because of course they are.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't believe in the pipeline argument at all. I think it's hard to find the right people, but I think you're exactly right, Sarah. Like, find better people to find the right people.
Yeah, it's funny. It's easy to sort of, you know, I saw the story and it's easy to sort of say, oh, Intel, yeah, you know, it's they're trying to be at the forefront, because again, it's a company they're trying to change their image, and so is doing a lot of different things than it started as doing. But Twitter has this problem. You know, the diversity reports that every company puts out are always like, slightly better than last year, but still really bad. All companies, except maybe the smallest startup that maybe we don't know about yet, they're still suffering from this. There's just a very homogenous culture in technology, and it's all around us. And we could talk about it all day, but the companies and the people in charge who are in the roles that are designed to change the face of diversity in their companies, there's a lot resting on their shoulders.
Yeah, not to mention their workforce is, like you say, already so huge. So, changing a long-term legacy of hiring practices and whatever to make a dramatic effect on the bottom line, the numbers that you see and, judge them against, that takes that really long time without just going in one day and saying, all right, we're going to fire half of our staff and then we're going to rehire only, underrepresented minorities in those positions starting today. Everybody, half of you are fired and we're just going to start from scratch. Slack is actually a company that's doing really well along these lines, and they're super aware and they're very vocal. And yeah, maybe for these newer companies, the kind of more modern companies like Slack, it's maybe a little bit easier because they go into the process with a different mindset and they can kind of make effective change from the beginning, and you see that right away.
Well, yesterday we reported that mall owner Sandeep Mathrani reported that Amazon was set to open 300 and 400 new brick and mortar stores across the U.S. He didn't really report that. He just threw it out in an earnings call, said, hey, they're going to do 300 and 400 to 400 new bookstores. And so, of course, everyone was like, well, that's crazy because they put the bookstores out of business. And so now they're going to move into the old bookstores. Today, Mathrani is backtracking on his statement, saying that his figures did not represent Amazon's plan. And Recode says that these stores might not just be bookstores. They might just be physical stores selling the rest of the stuff that Amazon sells. I think the initiative is called Amazon Retail. We talked about this last year. They have a patent to have these special kinds of stores, but Amazon has still not commented on this story.
Why would Amazon give us just bookstores? I mean, Amazon already killed the just bookstore model because it offered books and lots of other things. I just don't understand why Amazon would have physical bookstores that don't have other things that people want to buy from Amazon.
Could you imagine an Amazon bookstore that carries everything, that like all the categories that they carry? That's pretty insane.
Yeah.
There's no competition in bookstores now. There's that, right? Like it would just be Amazon.
But how often are you buying a book on Amazon? If you're an Amazon Prime customer, which I am, how often are you buying a book on Amazon versus paper towels? It's like Amazon can get way more out of physical stores than something that's books only, unless for some reason it's like tied around the holidays and they think they'll make so much money in some sort of brick and mortar establishment that it would be worth it to have it there the rest of the year.
I'm almost envisioning an Amazon store being kind of like Costco is, where you pay the fee, which we all do. We're Prime members, and as a result, you get the discounted in-store experience. Maybe it's even like a bulk buy, so that because it's just impossible for Amazon to like offer everything that they offer through the internet, through their site, all of those categories. That would just be a gigantic undertaking. But I completely agree with you, Sarah. Like books versus all the other stuff that you get on Amazon, like it may have started in books, but it's become so much more.
It really, I mean, it would be, I wouldn't blame somebody if they didn't know what Amazon started as, because it's just become such a bigger thing. I have noticed though that some of the old retail stores that have been around forever, they've kind of like turned into Amazon models. For example, I live not far from a Burlington coat factory. You've probably heard of Burlington Coat Factory, right? They sell coats. Burlington Coat Factory sells all sorts of things now, including food, at least the one by my house. And it's so weird. You walk by, you look in, you're like, what? Why would you? Burlington Coat Factory, and there's like groceries in there. It's happening.
Okay. To know.
Burlington Coat Factory and other things. Their new name.
You might be hungry.
Yes.
Well, up next, Iain Thomson is here to talk about who is spying on who these days. But first, let's take a snack break. This episode is brought to you by NatureBox, the AAA of snacks. When hunger strikes, don't reach for that half-eaten bag of chips. Be prepared with smart and delicious snacks from NatureBox. A few days ago, I told you that someone in our office, Burke, stole my NatureBox. The box.
Do you have it now?
We have it back.
You recovered?
It was mysteriously returned with one missing item, my sriracha roasted cashews.
Oh, interesting. Burke.
I investigated. I did a thorough investigation. I asked questions. I recorded all my conversations. Burke finally admitted. He tried to say sorry. He tried to replace it with a bottle of sriracha and a package of cashews. Not the same thing, Burke. Not the same.
Burke realized what we all know is that it's kind of, you can't help yourself.
No, you can't make your own sriracha roasted cashews. NatureBox's sriracha roasted cashews are made with high-quality ingredients that you can trust. In fact, all of NatureBox's snacks are made that way. And if you are a picky pescatarian like myself, rest assured they have snacks for everyone. They have vegan, they have no sugar added, they have non-GMO options. You can choose between savory, sweet, salty, tart. Choose from over 100 unique and tasty options like blueberry almond quinoa bites.
Those were the Belgian waffles. They're so good.
The Belgian waffles. That's what you need to steal from Jason if you want to make him angry or keep him happy by supplying him with those mini Belgian waffles or coffee kettle popcorn. Plus, you can fill out your snack profile and get personalized recommendations based on your preferences. NatureBox delivers right to your door, and if you get them delivered to your office, keep them under lock and key. Don't say I never taught you anything about snacks at the office. Fuel your game engine with healthy snacks. Visit naturebox.com/twit to get 50% off your first box now. That's naturebox.com/twit. Go there, get 50% off your first box of delicious personalized snacks sent directly to your doorstep.
Yummy. And you know what that's called when Burke does that? It's called being burked. You've been burked.
Okay.
So that's what it's called going forward. All right, joining us is Iain Thomson from The Register to talk about a US-EU sort of data thing. That's my horrible summary of it. How's it going, Iain?
Oh, pretty good. How about yourself?
It's going awesome. So let's see here. So you wrote an article about the EU and the US just reaching a last-minute deal kind of affects international data transfer. Before we get into that, tell us a bit about the origins of this deal, why the EU rejected Safe Harbor last year.
Okay, well, Safe Harbor's been around for about 15 years, and it was basically an agreement to allow companies to shift data across the Atlantic. And then an Austrian law student decided, he's actually in Silicon Valley at a course listening to one of Facebook's senior executives talking about how they use data. And he realized this is illegal. So he took it to the European Court of Human Rights. He won his case in October. And now this enormous kerfuffle has taken place as companies are desperately trying to find a way to stay within the law and still pass data back and forth across the Atlantic.
So tell us a little bit then about this agreement that's kind of being met right now. What's going on?
Yeah, they've replaced Safe Harbor with a thing called Privacy Shield, or Privacy Shed, as I'm referring to. It's somewhat shaky and rickety and full of holes. It's basically they had to get a deal done by the start of this month. They overran slightly, and they've got what looks like an incredibly broadly written agreement, which now has to be hammered out to something which the courts can accept. I mean, at the moment, basically the revised agreement says that the US promises, honest engine, that it's not going to conduct mass surveillance on EU citizens, and it will give a written guarantee of that every year. There'll be an ombudsman on both sides checking that's going on. Companies have to work under strict conditions as to what they can do with EU citizens' data within US borders. But the language that they're using is so broad that it's causing concern amongst a lot of privacy regulators, because this agreement now has to go to individual nation states, of which there are 28 in the EU, and they've all got to decide whether or not they're happy with the language as it stands. And I've got to say, based on my reading of what's been going, of what's actually in the Privacy Shield, there's going to be a lot of very hard discussions, because, as I say, the language is just stupidly broad.
Can you give us some examples of kind of what you're finding in there that's so worrisome to you as far as that's concerned?
Well, I mean, for example, they use the term that the US will agree not to conduct mass surveillance. Now, that would seem to be fairly,
surveillance light, maybe that, but not mass surveillance.
It all depends on how you use the word surveillance, because in NSA speak, as we saw with James Clapper's explanations about why he misspoke when it came to were they collecting dossiers of information on Americans, he explained that to the NSA, just collecting all that data isn't surveillance. It's only surveillance when an analyst actually pulls down the relevant hard drive and does it and actually looks at the data inside. So if they're saying, well, we won't conduct mass surveillance, does that mean that we will carry on slurping all data from EU citizens and it'll only become surveillance when we look at it in highly targeted ways? Or, as I think most EU people would prefer, it's just the NSA bugs out of our submarine cables. So, I mean, that's one example, really, of quite how broad this language is. And companies, for example, another section has companies must agree a strict deadline to investigating complaints by EU citizens if their data has been misused. Now, what deadline? Well, do they say, well, we'll fix it within a year? Do they say we'll fix it within 30 days? All of this stuff still has to be hammered out. And individual data regulators within the EU have given it a month to try and get this sorted out. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried herding cats, but the EU, getting them to work together is that much harder. So, quite frankly, unless there's a miracle occurs, then I think this is going to drag on and on and on.
So what's the bigger picture here? Like, how does Europe treat their citizens' data versus how does the United States treat our data? Like, what are the main differences, do you think, between the privacy in the two countries, or the two areas?
The key difference is that in the EU, there's an expectation of privacy, whereas in the US, there's no expectation of privacy. You have certain rights as an EU citizen as to how your data is used, at least within the economic bloc itself. Whereas in the US, basically, once you put information into a company's servers, they can do with it what they like. For example, if you're filling out like a mailing list form in an EU country, there has to be a little box there that says, I do or do not wish my data to be shared with third parties. No such requirement, to my knowledge, exists in the US. So there are very, very different ways of looking at what happens to an individual's data and their privacy. And traditionally, as I say, the EU has been much, much stronger on individual rights over the people's rights over their own data, whereas the Americans tend to take a more laissez-faire approach and trust people to do the right thing.
So it's right. Like, if I want to figure out what all the companies, like we've been talking a lot about Google searches. Like, if I want to find out what information is out there about me, it's not that easy to do that in the United States, right? But it's different in Europe. Is that correct?
It's considerably easier. Companies, if something's written down, if something's on a computer file, then you do have the right under the Freedom of Information Act, at least in the UK, to request that data and to receive it within a reasonable time. It breaks down slightly because it doesn't work for stuff that's written down on paper, rather bizarrely, which is just one of those odd legalistic statutes. But yeah, it's an awful lot easier to find out what data is available for you in the EU. Over here, you're really depending on the largesse of the companies involved, and I think as we've all seen, that's problematic to say the least.
Even Edward Snowden has kind of chimed in on this, kind of expressing his worry about kind of the openness of this, and of course he's at the heart of why this even exists as a conversation, let alone a movement in this way. So,
yes.
Go for it.
Oh, I mean, yes. I mean, Snowden, the second Snowden leak was about the PRISM system, whereby Facebook will feed your data into the NSA, and the agreement makes really no mention of this whatsoever. So, I mean, if Facebook, Google, Microsoft, the rest of them are still participating in the PRISM scheme, which it appears they are, then that instantly breaks the terms of the privacy shield. So it's, as I say, there's an awful lot of stuff that's going to be sorted out, and it's guaranteed to be challenged in the courts, because the guy who originally challenged this and caused the breakdown of Safe Harbor has said he's lawyering up to go after this in the courts already. So, yeah, it's going to be a very rocky road ahead.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on to talk with us about this, Iain Thomson from The Register. I'm sure we'll have you back soon enough. Thank you so much for writing this.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Take care, Iain.
Cheers.
Well, thank you to Jerry from Cleveland, who wrote in to say, since the topic of ride sharing comes up so often, I thought I would add my anecdotal observation on Uber's recent fare cut. Since the fare cut in early January, I've noticed that surge pricing is in effect significantly more often than it was previously. This means one of two things. Either some drivers followed through on their threat to quit because it wasn't worth driving anymore, or Uber lowered the bar for when surge pricing goes into effect. That's my conspiracy theory. What if Uber publicly announced lower fares but secretly changed the algorithm so there are more surge fares? They end up with both a marketing win and a financial win. I'm wondering if anyone else has noticed this trend of more frequent surge pricing. Thank you, Jerry from Cleveland. I don't take Uber or Lyft enough to now notice this. Do you believe in this conspiracy, Sarah?
I take Uber all the time. Lyft, not as much, but yeah, I mean, it's part of my life for sure. I wonder just what kind of, how many cars are on the ground in the Cleveland area, because I've never been there and I don't know how that urban area works. So it may very well just have to do with his city. I've heard the conspiracy theories before that if Uber just turns on surge pricing whenever it wants to, then it makes more money. And we don't really know if that, it doesn't really have to tell us exactly what's going on. People have taken Uber to task a few times where surge pricing kind of like kicked in effect. It was like during Sandy, Hurricane Sandy or something in New York, where there was some reason where it was like a really, it looked really bad for the company. But for the most part, if it's surge pricing and I don't want to pay, then I just don't pay. But I don't know. I don't know what the deal is in Cleveland. I hope the drivers are getting money enough so that they can make a living if that's what they want to do with their time. I know a lot of drivers. I mean, I talk to them. I probably take Uber 10 times a week, not even kidding. And, it's never the same person twice. And they've always got an interesting story about how they're really trying to make this their career. And some of them have much more sort of rosy pictures than others do.
Yeah. And so quite a fleet, too. They've got so many drivers in the city. So I'm not surprised to hear you say you take it that frequently and you don't see anyone.
Yeah.
So then you're close to Uber. Before we move on real quick, what do you think of the new logo?
Hate it.
It's kind of the general consensus, I think.
I mean, I know I'll get used to it.
That's the old one.
The old one was like, okay, it was sort of a funny shaped U, but it was a U for Uber. Mm-hmm. And the new logo is like, what? I don't know what that is.
Right. And there's a different logo for drivers and riders, too. I mean, was that the point?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really care what the drivers see as long as they pick me up in the right place. But I know as a user, when I updated my app yesterday, it's like my whole home screen is like, what is that thing? I'm pressing on that app icon all the time. And it just seems so like wildly different. And I don't get it. But, maybe Uber internally just that logo that we all got so used to, maybe that was a placeholder that just ended up hanging out a lot longer. And they always had another plan. And this makes sense to them. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, though.
I think I read somewhere that, and I didn't know this about the letter U, but that the letter U is not, a character that is shared amongst a lot of different cultures and a lot of different languages. So it could have something to do with that. If Uber has, big ambitions, continues with their ambitions to break into all of these different areas, maybe the letter U doesn't identify well with people who don't recognize that it's a letter U, for example. So maybe it's something along those lines. I just don't know how these necessarily tie in at all.
It's the point which you get, that's the road, and then that's where the Uber is in the square, right?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I said it was a driver app, but it's a partner app. They're partners,
got it.
Drivers.
Anyways. All right.
All I know is that an Uber driver took me to Petco so that I could pick up cat litter and sat there and waited because there was a long line inside Petco. I mean, I asked him to, but he did. And then, he helped me with my cat litter and even helped me get it inside my building. And he was really nice and I gave him 5 stars. And for that, because I don't own a car, so these are the sorts of things where I'm like, I'm so glad there's this service because no taxi cab would wait for me to do my groceries at any time. I can tell you that much.
Wait, awesome. So did they rate you? Does Uber rate you? Because I took Lyft and then I got a rating from the Lyft driver and I was impressed. I didn't know that it went both ways.
Yeah. They're both the same model. Drivers rate customers and customers rate drivers. If you're a driver and you go below 4.7, you can't be an Uber driver anymore. So it's really important. They really care. If you're a rider, you're not going to get kicked off, as being a customer, but you'll stop getting picked up.
Right. Unless they're desperate.
All right.
Yeah.
After the break, Sarah will tell us about the biggest award ceremony of the year. Oh, yeah, if you're a startup. But first, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of this episode, and that is FreshBooks. If you are a freelancer or you run a small business, chances are your least favorite part is rummaging through your receipts, trying to keep track of your expenses, creating, formatting, sending invoices. The worst, of course, tracking down customers who don't pay you on time. FreshBooks is a super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of businesses like yours, like the one you have, the tools to save time billing and get paid faster. I know Leo has used FreshBooks so many times for so many years. You're going to be creating and sending invoices in minutes. You get paid online right away with FreshBooks payments. and you get paid up front. So now you can request a deposit in FreshBooks and get that up front. No more covering costs out of pocket or waiting until the end of a project to get paid. Plus, FreshBooks recently announced their new card reader, so you can easily accept credit cards wherever business takes you, quickly, securely, right from your iPhone in less than a minute. FreshBooks card reader is EMV, that's chip card enabled, the new standard in the US. With their entirely redesigned iPhone app, you can conduct business anywhere, send an estimate right after the handshake, send an invoice in seconds right on your phone. It's so easy to track all your billable time. And now you'll know how long your projects actually take. So you can throw away that shoebox and track expenses on the spot using your phone's camera instead. All this allows you to focus on what you love the most. That's growing your business. No wonder why you didn't start with FreshBooks sooner. If you have any questions, help is free forever, and you can always count on FreshBooks award-winning support rock stars to go above and beyond whenever you need a hand. So it's nice to have that backup. Getting started is simple. It's totally free for 30 days. Go to freshbooks.com/TNT. Don't forget to enter Tech News Today in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Start your 30-day free trial today. And we thank FreshBooks for their support of this episode of Tech News Today. All right, TNT's fan of the day is at PalmDoc on Twitter, who says, curry, lox, and noodles at the local kopitiam. Kopitiam. So many words I don't know how to pronounce. He says, I wish I could share with Jason Howell. I would eat that bowl of food. I would certainly try it. He's in Malaysia, by the way. So there we go. That kind of looks like a delicious meal there. Great way to watch the show. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Record a video, take a picture of yourself, your setup, whatever you have. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT. And we are going to find it and hopefully show it on this show.
All right, Sarah, the 9th annual Crunchy Awards are next week. Tell us a little bit about what the Crunchies are.
The Crunchies, for 9 years now, have been an award ceremony that celebrate the best in startups and tech. This is something that started with TechCrunch, obviously, well before my time. It's kind of like there are a lot of organizations that try to put together tech-based awards. You had the Webby Awards for a while. I don't know. They might still be around. You've got the Shorty Awards. There are various internet awards. And they're all fun. I think that the Crunchy Awards, though, is kind of the longest running. Hey, we hang out in San Francisco. A lot of people from startups come, and maybe they get a little bit more dressed up than they usually would. And we've actually made it a little bit more of a, not like a traditional award show, because there's it's not like that at all. But it's at the War Memorial Opera House. If you've been there for, a ballet or an opera, it's a beautiful building. It's very, very grand. And we've never done it in this venue before, so it's bigger than ever. And we've also changed our category, our nomination categories a little bit, just to have something that's a little bit more streamlined. In the past, we had a lot of awards to give out. And in a way, it became harder for us to figure out, who's the best nominee for each award. So we have fewer awards, which kind of streamlines the show a little bit. And then we also have, for the first time, like a real a nomination committee. So we're acting essentially exactly the same as the Academy is. And that's so that we feel like it brings more clout to the whole thing. It's a fun night. We are not taking ourselves seriously. It's a good time. If you don't win an award, you're still a great company. But it's, I don't know the award that I'm presenting. I have no idea who's going to win until I open that envelope. Yeah, nobody does. And we've got this legal team that's going to bring it in a briefcase and stuff like that. So that happens on Monday. The Crunchies, we're at the War Memorial Opera House. So that's February 8th. And if you can't go, or if you're not planning to go, we will miss you, but you can watch it on our live stream at techcrunch.com. We live stream the whole thing. I'll be doing a pre-show that starts at 7:30. This is p.m. Pacific time, kind of backstage and having a little bit of fun. So do join us. It'll be a good couple hours of your life.
So you're going to announce an award. Are you a little bit afraid there's going to be like a Miss Universe situation? Where
you don't want to read the wrong one and then have to switch it out and...
No.
I'm not worried about that, guys.
Okay, good.
Thanks a lot for mentioning it, though, because now it's like in there.
Yeah. Sarah, do you think you might just say the wrong name? I'm pretty confident that I can read what's on that paper.
Okay, good. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. Let's talk a minute about the nominees for Best Technology Achievement. This is a really interesting range. Apple's 3D Touch, Microsoft HoloLens, SpaceX Falcon 9, Tesla over-the-air autopilot, and Atomic Power. I thought it was really interesting that Atomic Power was in the same list as 3D Touch. I think maybe 3D Touch might be the only thing on this list that average people have gotten to use, unless an average person has a Tesla. So do you get to vote?
Yes, I am on the committee. I have voted.
You have already voted, but yeah, I won't ask you what you voted for. But
yeah, I mean, all of the things that you've listed are like, wow, that's a great technology achievement. They don't have a lot to do with each other. So this is actually an interesting category because it's like, a rocket and 3D touch, how do you choose?
Right. What is your qualification on this one?
Right. But yeah, that's why I think that it's so fun these days because technology is, we can all sort of like sit around and say, all of us who do this for a living, like, everything's apps these days and it's all ephemeral, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, when you really think about it year to year, there's a lot of cool stuff that happens and it changes things, even if it doesn't change things overnight. So that's the idea. And it really is, 3D Touch is obviously, a big thing that happened inside some secret room in Apple, but the Crunchies really do still focus mostly on startups. Some of the startups are bigger than others, but still, it's that's sort of the core fun mission of this is to celebrate little teams who have made big impacts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we look forward to it. And thank you so much for coming on. I know you're busy, so we
me.
Totally appreciate it. Sarah's at TechCrunch and at Sarah Lane on Twitter. And anything else that we should tell people about?
I think we've covered it. Really, this was fun. I enjoyed it. It's nice to see familiar faces and talk about familiar stuff. But yeah, you can see all of my work at TechCrunch.com.
Admit it. It's nice to sit in front of this brick wall at least one more time.
Yeah,
I know.
Hopefully, it won't be the last time.
No.
Right.
Yet again, whatever. Sarah, honestly, it's been awesome podcasting with you once more. And this time on the other side of the control desk. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Right. All right. Take care, Sarah. All right, tomorrow's guest will be Aaron Carson from Tech Republic. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be a part of the show by emailing us, tnt@twit.tv, or leaving us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. You can also hit us up on Twitter. We are at Tech News Today TV.
And if you want to know more about the network or more about this show, who our upcoming guests are, all the behind-the-scenes gossip, you can subscribe to our newsletter at twit.tv/newsletter. And don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your fine podcasts. All the ways to subscribe are there on our show page at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, I am on Twitter at Megan Morrone.
And I'm Jason Howell. Thanks to our live producer, Anthony Nilsson, and all the folks that help us produce this show every day. Thanks to you for talking tech with us. We will see you tomorrow. Here's my high five with no face.